All right, so I think we're good to go. All right, we're going to talk about stakeholders today. Stakeholders are very important. So we're going to define them and we're going to talk about how to categorize them and might even give you some tips on how to study them because studying stakeholders is very essential in business. Byers and Stanberry, the authors of your book in 2018, noted that stakeholders include customers, clients, employees, shareholders, communities, the environment, the government, and the media. In other words, everybody. So you onto business, just think that anybody who somehow is affected by your business, they're a stakeholder. Now, there are internal stakeholders, those are your employees and your staff. You have external stakeholders, that's everyone else. But it goes a little further than that. So let's say you have Howie. He works for me at my company. He's obviously an internal stakeholder. Now, let's say Howie is married with 3.2 children or 2.5 children, whatever the average is. Well, his family are also my stakeholders, even though they're not directly associated with my company. Because they're associated with Howie and he's associated, now if I make decisions that impact Howie, it's in my best interest to consider those that are in his little circle as well. How are my decisions going to affect his family? So the family members of those that are our direct stakeholders, they're also our stakeholders. And if we put a business up in a community and they don't work for us and they don't come to us as customers or clients, they are still our stakeholders. The local communities that are impacted by our business are our stakeholders. So what if we're a multinational and we have conglomerate and we're all over the world, but we do business in one country where we don't have a single structure, but people actually do business with us? Well, that community is also included in our stakeholders. So we got to consider all these stakeholders. The authors identified two distinct groups of stakeholders, internal and external, like I just said. Internal stakeholders, the senior leadership and the board of directors are responsible for overseeing the organization's long-term mission and vision while ensuring that the company runs smoothly in the short and mid-term. Now, just a brief segue, tangent. A lot of times we talk about sustainability. And I was talking to one of my old professors who we now interact as colleagues. And I made the point that long-term sustainability outside of like the environment and maybe some aspects of society is not ever attainable. Because if we got a business and we're looking to make something sustainable in our product line will change in 1 to 3 years. We're updating our product line regularly. Or we may have a set of services and we're going to alter or change those services. So when we look at long-term sustainability, nothing is truly stable. So in a business, what we want to, you're going to hear people talk about the long-term vision and goals. That might be 5 to 7 years. Outside of that, they can come up with ideas, but there's too many variables that can happen for something to truly be sustainable in the long term, especially in the business field, in the business industry. But the short and midterm, we can definitely work on those. But if we try to get a goal that we think we as a company can stay focused on for 20 to 30 years, that's impressive. But just remember, it might change in 5 to 7 years when we go and review our mission and vision statements. Moving on, the CEO and the C-suite, they direct the various initiatives and ensure that the company runs smoothly while engaging in regular business that it conducts. This is who actually develops your mission and vision statements. These are the people that are going to adapt them as need be, which should be very rarely, but I'd say about every 5 to 7 years, probably need to review them and see if they need to be changed or altered. They also have the most holistic view of the company. They have the bird's eye view. So if they come up with a new program, policy, or initiative, and they don't communicate the reasons why to the staff can sit there and go, I don't understand. Why are we doing this change? Well, if you could see what the leadership could see, you would understand why. That's why communication is so important. If you're going to bring change into your organization, let your stakeholders know, especially the ones that are impacted directly by it. If it's a policy change, your internal stakeholders. If it's a product change, it'll be your internal and external stakeholders. Leadership at lower levels oversee the activities of the respective areas of responsibility. So if you think about organizational structure, you have the whole company. You can map it out on a hierarchical type map. You have the CEO at the top. You got your division heads, department heads. You're going to come down to middle management. You're going to come down to your operational level of management. Each one of these people are in charge, or each one of these managers are in charge of a system. A system is something that you can put a boundary around. So a team, a department, a division, a company, and we can keep on going all the way up to the universal cosmic level. Everything is contained within that system. So every system inside of our company is the main system. These are subsystems, and they all interrelate with each other. And we use something called systems theory to analyze this interrelationship that goes on between either the elements, which could be people, policies, procedures, or the subsystems. So if I'm in charge of a company, I see the company as a system. I see the subsystems as elements. If I am a department head, I see my department as a subsystem, but I deal with it like it's my own system that interacts with the system as a whole, but it's contained within it. And when I teach this in another class, I use, anybody ever hear of a little guy called Dracula? Okay, well, the real guy, Vlad Tepes III. He was a ruler in Wachovia. It's a hard word to say. And we know about the Dracula from the movies with the fangs and all that stuff. Well, the real world Dracula is even more fascinating. He was caught between two systems while managing a system. So his country, his little region, he's the ruler of. But he has the Ottoman Empire on one side and the Holy Roman Empire on the other side, of which he technically is a part of. But he is a boundary country, so he's got to appease them both somehow. And so he's dealing with the tops and the middles and the bottoms of these other systems while trying to maintain his system and being the top of his system. It gets confusing. And when we really begin to break it down, you can use the same technique I use to examine an organization, an organizational system. You can use it for history. You can use it for musical work, classical literature. You just way of breaking things down and looking for the interaction between the elements. So in this classroom, I would be considered the top. And let's say that in this case, Noah is my right-hand man in here, and he's going to be a middle, and everyone else are going to be what's called the bottom. Now, that doesn't mean you guys aren't important. You guys are very important. You're stakeholders. But in the way that the information flows, in the way who's got the most interactions, the people at the top have the most interactions, but they don't have the best nuanced vision of what's going on. I've got the holistic view, but the detailed view, Natalie has. Everyone else here, Riley has it. Everyone else has it. Noah has more than I do of the detailed view, but still he's missing some because he's not down at the ground level. And so a system is built the same way that we look at leadership. Senior leadership, well, that's strategic management. Middle management, that is tactical management. The lowest level, that's operational management, and that's the operational level. So each one of these is a contained system while being inside of the bigger system itself. So I just bring that up because it helps us, I believe, in understanding stakeholders better. Okay, because not every stakeholder has the same weight when we look at them and evaluate them. Okay, Simba, he buys our products all the time. Okay, I'm going to listen to his view. He's been shopping from us, ordering huge orders. I mean, he's buying millions of dollars of stuff from us. So when he has a complaint or a recommendation, I turn my ear. Okay, someone else might only buy $50,000 worth of stuff. They make a complaint. Oh, we hear them, but we categorize them in kind of another group of like claims and like stakeholders. So continuing here with external stakeholders. And remember, I'll be posting these slides. So if you're vigorously taking notes, if that's how you learn and study, awesome. If not, remember, I do post these as well. But I'm not telling you to stop. Please keep writing. And if you ever get to the point you're like, I need to bring a micro cassette recorder or something, audio digital recorder, I don't mind. It's important to develop a positive reputation when dealing with external stakeholders. So those who are not directly associated with us on the payroll, or they're not a vendor or a distributor. Byers and Stanbury pointed out that this is accomplished through the following. You develop trust, and trust takes time and consistency. The more you can interact with your stakeholders, the more they can interact with you, the more they know they can depend on what you're saying. You develop a sense of trustworthiness with each other. Demonstrating integrity. So we as a company are going to avoid scandals, which doesn't mean we're just going to cover everything up. It means we're going to avoid the actions that lead to scandals. That's the best way to develop integrity and communication in a truthful and honest way. We're going to listen to the perspectives of our external stakeholders. So our customers, that's the voice of the customer. And as you remember from the operations OPM 2000, voice of the customer sets the quality and the value for whatever it is our company is doing, a service or a product. So we have to listen to those voices. They really dictate how we are going to adapt to them. They actually speak through their complaints, their compliments, through what they buy, and their returns. And nowadays, your generation really has never known a time period without social media. I remember a time period without computers in every home, let alone social media. A company has, let's say, an X account, formerly Twitter, and a Facebook account. So Noah, he buys some stuff, he's satisfied, he says, they're on X, and he posts on there good praise. Well, we're actually going to get that information. But Riley gets something and it's horrible service, a horrible product. She posts it as well. We're going to get that also. So we're going to be collecting this information, not just from our 1-800 number, not just from customer cards that are sent in, if anyone still does that, but we're going to get through email sent to the company, through social media accounts, through your spending habits. Continuing with our list, treating internal and external stakeholders fairly. You have to treat stakeholders fairly. If you are trying to have your employees wanting to be at their job, engaged at work, they have to be treated fairly. Mistreat them, you're going to lose them. Customers are very similar. You're not creating a good environment for them to work in, but if we have a store, we want that environment good. If we've got a website, any way that they interact with us, any connection, we want to make sure that they're being treated fair. We're not judging them on anything with race, gender, nationality, religion, ability level, disability level. We're not going to judge them on anything. Okay, we're just going to avoid that. Therefore, we're going to avoid a lot of scandal right there. Some other stakeholders, the authors noted that the suppliers that our company depends on are vital as a set of stakeholders. So our vendors, this is who we get either our raw material from for our production, or if we're getting components to assemble here, it's wherever we're getting what's coming in as an input. Wherever our inputs come from, that's our vendors, our suppliers. We need a positive relationship with them. They're stakeholders. They have a stake in our company because if we do good, we buy more of their product. Therefore, they succeed. If we do poor and we have a poor reputation or a scandal hits us, it can affect them. Ever hear this concept of sin by association? So let's say I'm the CEO and I have this horrible scandal and I wind up in court and I have all this stuff going on and we're in the news. Our company name is all over the place because as a human being, I messed up. As a CEO, I'm tied to this company. So now the company is directly hurt. But now it comes out who our vendors are. Now they're indirectly hurt. People they stop buying from them. Even though they didn't have the same scandal, they didn't commit the scandal, I did. They are impacted. So we've got to think about the big picture. There's a lot of people that are impacted, and we got to treat them fairly. Governmental organizations, such as the Security and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, or the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and others exercise legal power over organizations by upholding legislation, rules, and conducting evaluations. This shows how they're connected to us as a stakeholder. Not only are we paying taxes, but they have a regulatory function to make sure we are functioning environmentally in a good way, that we're treating people fairly in our employment standards and practices. And so they are a stakeholder. Customers and clients expect a certain degree of trustworthiness and accountability from organizations. Case in point, I would say I'm going to date myself here, but 25 years ago or so, I think it was, MCI WorldCom was a huge company. So was Enron. Now, you may have never heard of these companies, but they make for great case studies. In the case of Enron, there was a huge scandal. People's money, their 401k, their investments were completely devastated because of senior leadership. They wound up facing court and trials and everything. They got a horrible bad name. To this day, Enron is still almost like a curse word in the business field. Okay. MCI WorldCom, they were one of the they were one of the biggest global providers of long distance phone service. Back in my day, you didn't just have one device and you just pick it and you call and you dial and you talk to whoever it is. Our phone was stuck to the wall and you had your local provider, that's where your phone number comes from, and you had your long distance carrier. That's who gave you your bills. So you had two sets of bills, your local calls and then your long distance calls. Well, MCI WorldCom was one of these long distance providers. Okay. Well, through some bad decisions and changing technology, they vanished. The case that I want to bring up here is that they need to stay, one, connected to the stakeholders. What do your customers want? If technology is changing and shifting, we need to also. Sears, we used to have stores in every mall, but that's not how they started. They started as a catalog company way back with the Old West. And you would get the catalog and be at the general store and you put your order in, give the money, and you'd wait for a couple weeks, a month, a couple months, and you would get your sewing machine or your new cowboy hat, whatever it was. Well, they adapted when we started having shopping malls, and they put stores in shopping malls, and it was doing good. They were succeeding. But then we moved to the internet during the 90s. Sears didn't. They said, we don't need to. We have our catalog and we have our big box stores. They didn't adapt. Well, they're pretty much defunct now as a company. Same thing with Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. They didn't keep up when the movies went digital. And so if they had listened to their external stakeholders and their internal stakeholders, they could have survived, but they didn't. Customers and clients, they expect ethical decisions and fair treatment of the staff. When we do business with a company and we find out that they're mistreating their staff, many people stop doing business with them. So we want to avoid scandals. We want to avoid mistreating our employees. We want to avoid these like the plague. One, because it's unethical. Two, because our stakeholders are going to find out, and that includes our customers, our investors, and soon we're not going to have investors and we're not going to have customers. And we're going to go out of business. Many also consider the long-term effects their business has on the environment. Here, this does mean long-term in the real meaning of the word. If our business uses natural resources, but we overuse them, we abuse them, or we put waste into, like nuclear waste, out into the streams, we are going to destroy the environment. When our stakeholders, as customers and investors, find out about this, many of them will never do business with us again. So we have to think about that. We might not be for all pro-environmental, but our stakeholders may be. We have to listen to them. If they are, then we need to become pro-environmental, but we don't need to do it in a way that only is for show. That's called greenwashing. And once we're discovered as being greenwashers, that's a scandal. So either we do it for real or don't do it at all, But if we want to keep up with our market and have a good market share, we better be involved with what our stakeholders are interested in. People that like to buy Patagonia, they like that company because they are environmentally conscientious and they have programs in place. And they have very loyal customers that will never buy any other brand when it comes to their ski wear or outerwear. A relationship between the organization and its stakeholders. The authors pointed out that the relationship between customers and clients often goes beyond the products and services they purchase. This can develop into returning customers or clients, positive word of mouth advertisement, which is free, and we want that, and receiving positive feedback. Okay. So we got to develop that relationship. The ethics, and how do ethics apply to or deal with stakeholders? Where does ethics come in? It's important that we consider whether the organization applies the ethical minimum or the ethical maximum in how it deals with stakeholders. The ethical minimum is literally just meeting the letter of the law. As a company, we are legally mandated to fulfill the law that pertains to our business sector. As a company, we have the choice to involve the maximum level in ethics, which goes above and beyond the letter of the law. And we may take great pride in starting initiatives to help the poor, the unhoused, the homeless in the community. And this isn't something we have to do. We want to do it. Our stakeholders find out about it, and they who like that want to do more business with us. So the ethical minimum means that the company barely does the right thing except when mandated by law. The way it goes, the legislation always trails behind the social ethos. The social ethos, it's the Overton window. Has anybody heard that before? Did I mention that last week? Think of a set of brackets. You have a spectrum, so you got 0 and 10. You got these brackets. And these brackets shift over time. So if we're talking about the social norm when it comes to various ethical things, environmental concerns, if there's very little, it shifts towards 0, and that's society. If there's a big push towards taking care of our environment, it pushes towards 10. So that box is called the Overton window, and it shifts. It's never 100% just static. It doesn't just sit there, but it takes years for it to shift. Laws follow behind that. So as we become more and more environmentally conscientious, that Overton window moves, but the laws are still back here. Give it 10, 20 years, those laws catch up to where that window was. By the time they make it there, that window has moved again. So the laws are always following behind where the social ethos is at. Ethical minimum is when the organization takes the maximum is when the organization takes the most ethical route, even when not mandated by law. And one example, the organization is applying the ethical minimum would be if it offers its employees additional benefits above what is legally required. So if we give greater benefits to our staff, we're going above what the law says, we're applying an ethical maximum. Now we go to social responsibility. Technically, it's corporate social responsibility, and it's abbreviated CSR. And if you haven't been exposed in your classes to it yet, you will over the next few years, for sure. The authors noted that the social responsibility of a business is demonstrated when the organization is responsible to all stakeholders and makes that a significant part of its mission and vision. So this is a part of social responsibility, CSR. And since there are numerous stakeholders for each organization, it can be difficult to please them all. But a business needs to take these conflicting concerns seriously, as the authors noted, and they stated it is the right thing to do and it is good for business. So we have all these stakeholders. What we're going to do is we're going to break them up into groups. They don't know it, but we've been collecting information from them. And so we sit down and we actually break them into groups. And this group, which is literally just Howie at the moment, let's say we make hats. Howie really wants red hats. You over here, you want green hats. And they're over there, you just want functionable hats that keep the sun out of your eyes for a good price and a good level of quality. It's not going to have to be replaced every year. It's going to last you for a few years. That's what you want. We've got to figure out who's got the greatest claim. Well, one, who is the largest group? So is their claim something we can do? Is it something that everybody will ultimately benefit from? If so, we're going to meet that claim first. Next, well, you want green hats and you want red hats. Now we're going to look at this. Okay, let's say that red dye is for some reason expensive for us. It's easier for us to get the green dye. And since we started tracking our stakeholders, you've increased by, let's say, 20%. This category hasn't yet. We're going to meet that because that's the next greatest claim. Now, if we still have resources and can get that red dye, well, it would be beneficial to meet that stakeholder group as well, their claim. What you want from the organization as a stakeholder is called a claim. You have a claim on that organization. So we divide them out. Who's got the most important investors? You will find some investors want us to treat our employees fairly. Some don't. All they're worried about is the dividend. Make me money. So if we got stakeholders who are investors over here, shareholders, and we got most of them don't care about how we treat the environment or they don't care about how we treat employees, it makes it difficult for us to enact these positive changes from an organizational standpoint because all they want is a dividend. So if we implement social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, or environmental programs, we may reduce the dividend. But here's the caveat, and that's what these people need to understand, especially if they're investors. If we introduce a corporate social responsibility initiative in our company, initially, we're not going to see a profit increase. But over 3 years, only 3 years, we will see a profit increase. And the thing about it is that is actually sustainable. We can maintain that increase over many years if we stay headed in that direction. So in the short term, they lose some money because we're wanting to dispose our nuclear waste properly. They don't like that. But because we're doing that, we attract more customers, create more profit over time, and they would have made even more money if they had just stood it out and done the right and ethical thing. Okay. Stakeholder claim. We just talked about that. Okay, so we're going to break down stakeholder claims into a couple groups here. We got the ways of looking at them, should I say, ways of evaluating it. In this approach, which is the descriptive approach, in this approach, the stakeholder groups are considered according to their interests. The organization adopts the best strategy to provide a sense of balance between any conflicting stakeholder claims. So here we're looking at the claims, and we say how, just like we did a minute ago, how can we reduce the conflict between these stakeholder groups? How can we keep everyone happy and meet the claims for the greatest group, the largest group, and still maintain our legal and ethical standing that we want to have? The next one is the instrumental approach. Here, the overall profit of the organization is considered, and a strategy is employed to manage stakeholder claims to achieve that result. So the instrumental approach is more profit-driven. Now, as Simba and Noah and you know from my OPM 2000 class, profit is not the only indicator of our organization's success. The triple bottom line is being applied more and more in more businesses that are out there. And that looks at profit, yes, but also people or stakeholders and the environment. And we've got to consider these things when we look at our overall profit margin. It's not just money anymore. It's literally based in ethics. So we need to maybe try to attract investors that, while they want an increase in their investment, they want it done ethically, especially if we as a company want to remain ethical. If we only care about meeting the law, and are not concerned about the rest of the ethics, then it really doesn't matter. But we will stand to lose potential customers and clients taking that route. You have the normative approach. Here, stakeholders are seen as being the ends instead of the means. So that's the goal we're shooting towards, is to please our stakeholders instead of being the way that we're able to meet our ultimate goal, which is providing a product or service to the community at large. The interests of all stakeholder groups need to be considered here, but we're concerned about them being the end. We want all our stakeholders happy. It's like being in high school and you want to make everyone happy so they're all your friend. Well, that's kind of an impossible thing. You're not going to please everybody. You're just not going to. So, but this is a way of looking at stakeholder claims. Now, stakeholder categories, you have enabling stakeholders. These are the governmental regulatory bodies, stockholders, federal, state, and local governments, and the organization's board of directors. These are the stakeholders that make our company possible to even exist. The government lets us exist because we're able to file the paperwork and get our 50, not 501c, but our corporate status. We can run our stocks if we're publicly traded. We run that through the stock exchange. We follow the laws and rules there. So they give us the ability. Now, society as a whole gives us the privilege of having a business. Society lets us as a business exist by, one, letting us in their community. Two, being our customer. That's how they're giving us that permission. Let's move to normative stakeholders. And remember, these are the categories. This is where we find the organization's competitors and its peers in the industry. So we make shoes. So our normative stakeholders are going to be the competitors: Adidas, Reebok, Nike, Skechers. And to show you how they're all connected, in game theory, companies use game theory, and it's a mathematical theory, in understanding when and how and why to do certain things. And it's not just for business. We can use it in the military. We use it in literal games. We use it in our social groups, and we use it oftentimes without even knowing it. The most famous dilemma is the prisoner's dilemma in game theory. So we make shoes. We're a little startup company, and we come in and we offer a high quality shoe, but we sell it dirt cheap. Well, Nike, Reebok, and Adidas, they're not going to like that, because as a group of normative stakeholders, they came up with a quote unquote treaty where they set what the lowest line of shoe is going to cost and the highest quality of shoe, what that's going to cost. They give a range. That's why when you go buy shoes, while one shoe might be $30, $40, $50 more expensive or less expensive, it's never going to be so dramatic like it's hundreds of dollars less for that same tier of shoe. You go in to buy a mid-grade shoe, all the mid-grade shoes are going to be in the same general price range. That's because they established an agreement. That's what they were going to charge for that tier level. We come in and upset that. Now we're amassing a greater number of customers. Our share of the market is growing. We're taking it from them. But as normative stakeholders, there had been an agreement of what the pricing point was going to be, the range. This way, they could still be competitors, but not undercut each other's business completely. And the shoe industry isn't the only industry that does this. Other industries do it as well. So that's why young little startups often get bought up. They come in, they're willing to sell it at a lower price. That's going to offend the big companies. They start making offers. Either we cave and sell it and make a profit, or we hold to what we believe in and keep that company alive, and then they start maneuvering for a hostile takeover. That's the business world. It is very cutthroat. We have functional stakeholders. The authors noted that this is the category where we find any stakeholder that has an impact on the various inputs of the company, such as suppliers or employees. Now, I tend to call employees internal stakeholders, but they are technically a functional stakeholder. Without employees, the company, which as an entity, would not exist. They also pointed out that we find any stakeholder having an impact on the business's outputs, customers, clients, and distributors in this category. And so here we're looking at, are they involved with their inputs or outputs? Diffuse stakeholders. This is where we find the organization's competitors and its peers in the industry. Now you'll notice diffuse stakeholders is much like normative stakeholders. That's because our competitors fall into two of these categories. It really depends on how we as a company are going to identify them and deal with them, whether they're going to be a normative stakeholder or a diffuse stakeholder. And here's a little chart that is showing how they all kind of relate to the organization. They're all connected to our company, but they are grouped differently. So we want to group our stakeholders so when we go to evaluate their claims, we know what group we're dealing with. We're not going to deal with only the claims of the stockholders, but we're going to look at the legislation, the governmental bodies, our board of directors, because that's all impacting our actual financial standing. The board of directors has a great influence, a great level of impact on our finances. Now we have to prioritize these stakeholders. Byers and Stanbury define stakeholder prioritization as being how an organization determines which stakeholder group's interests are most important. They give the following steps. Determine that the person is a stakeholder and which stakeholder group they belong to. That's step one. Step two, determine what the business needs from the stakeholder and the stakeholder group. Determine the exigency. Can't speak. I swear, it's Monday. Is it Monday? My tongue is still on the weekend. Exigency level. And this is the urgency. How emergent is it? How immediate do we have to do this? If it's a claim relating to financing for an expansion project we're working on, it would be really urgent. If it's something that's going to impact us legally, that's really urgent. If we're in the medical field and it deals with people's emergency situations coming to the ER, that's going to be at that level. We're going to consider that as, those are the ones we take care of most important. It's like triage. Triage is a French word for sorting. So when I was in the military, we sorted people that were injured and sick, completely opposite of what you're used to in the civilian world. Because we wanted to take somebody who's able to go back out into the battlefield and get them back out there as quick as possible. So if you've got a big hole right here, you're not going in first. We'll stabilize you, but you'll go in like fourth. We're going to take everyone else with maybe a broken arm, a sprained ankle, and put them through first because we can get them back out into combat quicker. In the civilian world, it's exactly opposite. The person with the big hole in their chest goes in first. So we are triaging the claims of our stakeholder groups, which and who has the greatest, most emergent claim. They offer a second approach to prioritizing stakeholders, and here we use a matrix. You have two axes. You have the stakeholder power over here, and down here you have the stakeholder interest. You're going to label it with low interest and high interest, and then high power, low power. Okay, so we're looking at this. You have under low interest, stakeholder right here, stakeholder interest, it's low. The power is high, you want to keep them satisfied. If they are a low interest, but their power is low, they don't have as much pull and claim on an organization, you just kind of keep an eye on their claims. Don't do much about them. Over here, a high interest and a high power, we want to really work close with them. We want to meet as many claims of theirs as we can. Okay, when it's not as much power, but it's still high interest, we stay informed on what they're wanting, the directions they're leaning toward. So I think the matrix approach is actually very useful. Now we have to manage the expectations. the authors noted that to properly manage stakeholders, the organization has to effectively communicate with them. One way that we can do this is to use MITRE's Guide to Stakeholder Assessment and Management. The steps provided by the authors include identify stakeholders, evaluate available data to determine their interests and claims, communicate with the organization, or communicate what the organization is doing to meet those interests or claims. They pointed out that an organization should consider the needs of the customers and clients because those are the stakeholders that they depend on to generate revenue. So if we have investors and we have customers, they both have a high level of power. Okay, the investors give us money on loan that we give back with profit. It's a dividend, called a dividend. Our customers, they give us money and we give them our product. We make our actual profit from the customers, not from the shareholders. The shareholders enable us to be able to do the work necessary to make the product, to sell it and get profit back. And then we give them a share of that. So between these two groups, shareholders and customers, I would say that the customers are actually the more important of the two groups because they're where we get our literal profit from. So their claims should probably be considered as being more important. But yet we have to weigh that out because without the investors, we can't build the new building to make the products to sell them. So we got to balance this out. Do you see how this starts becoming a balancing act? Effective communication with these stakeholders can help to shape their interests and claims. As a company, we can actually do a lot to shape what our customers actually want. We do this through advertisement, through our publications, through our interaction with the community, through social programs we enact and participate in. So some steps that the authors give us here is we need to identify how open the stakeholder group is to the company's products and services. We have to communicate that the company understands any gap between the expectation and the actual product or service. It's like when you get a burger at a burger joint and you see the menu board and that burger, it literally is picture perfect, right? The meat is cooked perfect. The tomatoes and lettuce are fresh. The bun is it looks like it just came out of the oven. When you get it and you open up the container, does it ever look like that picture? Okay, you have the expectation, you have the actual product. Now we got to somehow communicate with our customers so they understand that picture, the expectation, what you're getting doesn't look like that because of how we put it together. And we're a fast food place. This isn't a gourmet burger joint. So we're not making this one thing just for you and give it to you. We're making a bunch and we got a lunch rush coming through. And so we make a whole lot at once. So people going to McDonald's typically understand this. And you don't expect your burger to look like the image on the menu board. Now, we may have a company where our customers expect one thing because that's what the advertisement says. They get something, it had better match it. You go and buy an expensive car, you go and buy, and you spend a lot of money on really whatever it is you want to spend money on. You've done your research. You picked what company you're going to buy from and what the product is. And if you get it and it doesn't comport to what the advertisement was, return it. And that's another way that customers give us their voice, the voice of the customer. We look at returns. So if we got a lot of returns coming back on something, maybe we need to look at our messaging, our advertisement. Are we somehow advertising this as being better than it is? If so, maybe we should adjust that. Communicate any processes that will help in closing this gap or providing the desired product or service. All right. So we have to be proactive in dealing with our stakeholders. We have to be very proactive in dealing with our customers. And like I said, we do this through advertisement, which does include social media. A lot of companies advertise through social media now. One, it's kind of cost effective. Two, it's kind of instantaneous. And three, everybody's using social media already, so why not advertise there? Now let's go back to CSR for a minute. As we talked about earlier, CSR, corporate social responsibility, is a major factor in stakeholder relations. The social benefit of the organization's products, services should be highlighted. And I'm going to include there not just our products or services, but other things we're involved in as a company. Maybe we have opportunities for our employees to volunteer time in the community. Maybe we give to certain nonprofit organizations. Now, we could say by letting our customers know this is what we do is a way of blowing our own horn, patting ourselves on the back. But in reality, it's a way of letting them know what we're actually up to. Okay. If you know what a company is interested in from a social point of view, you may agree with that and want to do more business there. And so that isn't just the company making itself look better. It's the company literally saying, this is what we're doing, reporting to you, being transparent. But if we lie in that, we are going to have a scandal of epic proportion. Okay, CSR and the triple bottom line. They presented the triple bottom line, which I talked about a minute ago. It was developed by John Eccleton in 1994. It was a way for organizations to determine their effectiveness concerning CSR programs. And it is actually being used in more and more industries. The authors pointed out that it contains three factors. You have the social, the environmental, and the economic. So we have the people or stakeholders, you have the environment, and you have profit. You look at those three things to see how effective your business is or how successful your business is. It's not just that profit margin anymore. It's how are you on environmental issues? How are you with society and community as a whole? People look at this when they determine whether a company is successful or not. So here's a graphic demonstrating the triple bottom line. So you have the company, it's connected to the social, economic, and environmental. Under social, you have employee well-being, fair trade, community stakeholder. Under economic, you have revenue, growth, cost. Environmental, land use, carbon footprint, waste. And that's just some ideas. Obviously, the lists are much more extensive than that. Now, CSR and public relations. This is where the acronyms meet, CSR and PR. Byers and Stanberry noted that CSR initiatives can be used by organizations as an effective public relations tool. This is what we're doing. We care about this. However, greenwashing, as I mentioned before, using CSR initiatives to hide the organization's unethical and environmentally unsound practices must be avoided. This is putting out there a lie. It's saying, oh, we care about our employees' safety and treating them with fair compensation packages. Oh, we care about environmental issues. And we put out these wonderful initiatives and these programs, and we say these wonderful things in speeches and have these in our advertisements. And some reporters come in and they check things out and they find out that we mistreat our employees, underpay them, throw nuclear waste and chemical waste all over the place, and that we're just generally horrible as a company. They put this out there in an expose. We just lost credibility. All the trustworthiness we had been working and developing, it's down the drain now. But when used ethically and honestly, very sincere, CSR initiatives can be a beneficial way to help form, reshape things like stakeholder expectations, and can actually improve our actual profit. That's why companies do this. They see this as a way to make more money. So let's say that we're concerned about the environment, and we'll get those people that want that from the companies that make the products they buy. But then our investors don't want us to be environmentally sound. They just want the highest profit margin possible. So we're trying to make both the groups happy in this weird way. We're saying we're doing the right things to the customers, but we're doing the things that make our investors the most money. we will be found out. We will have legal cases against us, and we will lose customers over it. It just may not happen at once. That is the end of the deck of slides. Any questions? All right. Any questions from those online?
No.
All right. I will be posting the slides and the video to the announcement page. And then I probably should take a look here under this. In your discussions, make sure that you reply to at least 2 classmates. Make sure that you use APA 7 references and citations when you present information that comes from a source in your assignments and also in discussions. This week, you have 2 discussions, one on stakeholder weights, and there's one that's discussing the Lodge versus Ford Motor Company and the Shalinsky versus Wrigley. Interesting things. Did you know that Dodge actually came from Ford? The Dodge brothers got upset at Henry Ford and went off and started their own company. And that the Shalinsky versus Wrigley had to do with lights at night at baseball games. It's going to be some interesting stuff. I think you'll enjoy those case studies. And I look forward to your discussions. You don't have any assignments, just those 2 discussions this week. All right, I will see you on Wednesday on Zoom. You have a great week.
Thank you. I'll see you Wednesday.
Sounds like a plan. Natalie, you are quite the attentive student. You're like, if I'm spending the money on tuition, I'm going to get my money's worth.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think a lot in this class. I like to write my thoughts down and like connect them to what you're talking about.
Philosophically, have you figured out what vein you are philosophically? Are you like an existentialist or?
I actually like didn't realize I liked philosophy that much until this class. Like I'm thinking about doing a math.
This is practical philosophy dealing primarily with business ethics.
Yeah.
But the underpinning of it is philosophy. I have my bachelor's is in religion and my first master's is in theological studies. That's what qualifies me to teach philosophy. Because theology is like tons of philosophy. Basically as much as I got in a master's in philosophy. Philosophy kind of explains why we do the things we do in a existence sort of identity sort of way, where like sociology might say and psychology kind of say this is why your brain thinks this way because of these things in your past and life. We in philosophy, what we do is we look at that, but we look at the whole totality and say, why are humans the way humans are? Why is this group of humans the way they are? What shaped them? We look at ethics, values, morals. We look at these concepts, and believe it or not, philosophy is not a boring subject at all.
Yeah, I feel like I started reading about it like after like Monday last week, and I've gotten like really been like writing about it every day. Like, it's just really interesting. I've always thought that way. I just didn't know what it was like considered.
Philosophy, it's 2 Greek words, philo, sophe, and it means lover of wisdom. That's what philosophy is. So philosophy is not this, it can seem like high and lofty and kind of like airy. In reality, it's the nuts and bolts behind the curtain of what humanity is. Also has a lot to do with science, has a lot to do with all kinds of things, politics, everything. So if you like it, great. I might be able to recommend some philosophers for you once you kind of get it under feeling of, okay, so an existentialist, I think, therefore I am, Rene Descartes, versus like David Hume, that's more the Enlightenment sort of the thinkers, rational thought and free will. Plato, that's the ideal plane. There's an ideal plane of existence, and this one mimics that one, but it's not the ideal plane. This is actually the illusion. The next one is the real plane, more metaphysical. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely think more into it. I'll have more questions for you very soon.
Sounds like a plan. You have a great day.
You too.
You too.